Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A very warm welcome to our webinar on the ILO's Global Flagship Programme on building social protection floors for all that we organize today in collaboration with socialprotection.org. During the next 90 minutes, you will hear from us about our program. First, we will have a panel discussion about the ILO's vision of a world where everyone is covered against life cycle risk. I'm very honored to have today with me for this panel discussion, Ms. Valerie Schmidt, Mr. Richard Rory from the Social Protection Policy, he's Social Protection Policy and Research Analyst at the National Social Security Fund in Kenya, Ms. Eileen O'Donovan, who is Social Protection Policy Lead at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Irish Aid, Mr. Ariel Pinot, who is Social Protection and Occupational Safety and Health Specialist of the ILO Decent Work Team and Office for the Caribbean, and Mr. Andre Gama, who is Social Protection Program Manager for ILO's Country Office in Vietnam. And of course, Valerie Schmidt is the Deputy Director of the ILO's Social Protection Department in Geneva. After having heard from our experts during the discussion, we will have a presentation of the flagship program, of its strategy for the second phase, which I myself, Aurélie Klein, will do, and I'm a Social Protection Technical Officer, also at the Social Protection Department of the ILO in Geneva. A few more words on our panelists. So we have Ms. Valerie Schmidt, who has joined the ILO in 2003. She has over 25 years of professional experience in the field of social protection, and this is combining both work at headquarters as well as in the field in various types of organizations, including the ILO, but also consulting groups in France and also NGOs. As the next panelist, we have Mr. Richard Rory. He works at the National Social Security Fund of Kenya as a social protection policy and research analyst. Currently, he's attached at the State Department of Social Protection and is part of the team at the National Social Protection Secretariat. He works on policy matters related to social protection. Our next panelist is Eileen O'Donovan. She is the Social Protection Policy Lead in Irish Aid. And previously, she was Deputy Head of Development in the Embassy of Ireland in Ethiopia and Tanzania. Prior to joining the Irish government, Eileen worked for many years in development in a range of areas, including gender, education, governance, and rural development in Asia, Africa, and Central America, with a number of organizations in the private sector as well as in civil societies. Our next speaker, Mr. Ariel Pinot, is now based in the Caribbean Decent Work Team of the ILO. Previously, he was also a social security specialist of the ILO based in West Africa. He was also working in Geneva for the International Social Security Association and was a regional coordinator for the Americas and Africa, as well as a coordinator of the technical commissions. Before joining the ILO, he was working in Argentina as a senior advisor at the Secretariat for Social Security of the Ministry of Labor and Employment and Social Security. And then our last speaker in the panel is Mr. Andre Gama, who is now based in the ILO's country office in Vietnam. Before joining the Vietnam office in 2021, he was Social Protection Advisor in Timor-Leste. He joined the ILO in 2014 as a researcher at the ILO Research Department in Geneva. And then the last one who is speaking today, but presenting, not part of the panel, it's myself. I just joined the ILO last year. I'm working a lot on the flagship program. That's why you're hearing from me today. And before joining the ILO, I've been working in development cooperation for different organizations, including the World Health Organization, Luxembourg Development Corporation, and European Commission at headquarter level, as well as in several positions across Southeast Asia. We want our webinar to be very interactive. You have the possibility to ask questions to our panelists and also to ask questions after the presentation of the second phase of our flagship program. For this, we kindly ask you to use the Q&A function, which you find on the control bar of Zoom. And when you write your question, please state your name and organization, and also indicate if your question is directed to a specific speaker. And with this, I hand over to Ariel for moderating the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Aurélie. Greetings from the warmth of the Caribbean. It's very nice to have you all here today in this important webinar on social protection for all and the global flagship program of the ILO in the phase 2. I'm very happy to have such a diverse panel, and I'm sure we will learn from each other and we will share great experiences in building universal social protection for all. So this panel will start with the presentation from Valerie, which will set the framework for the discussions in the 3 areas we will be talking about today, which is universal social protection financing, and robust and resilient social protection systems, with the participation of the 3 panelists and Valerie and Aurélie, of course. So without any further ado, I will hand over now to Valerie just to give an introductory presentations. So we have the framework for discussing. Valerie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ariel. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. I think that here on this panel and in this virtual room, everybody knows that social protection is a human right, recognized as such in 2 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in many of national constitutions. Social protection is extremely relevant in the context of the COVID-19 crisis, but also before this crisis, because we know that it prevents and reduces poverty, inequality, and is really a catalyst for many development goals. We know, for instance, that unemployed people can find a job if they have social protection. They can also make the necessary green transitions more just. However, as stated in our recent World Social Protection Report, which was launched in September this year, social protection is still today is still not a reality for more than half of the world's population, so 4 billion people in total. So these people without social protection, they live in a world without access to the healthcare services they need, where children have to work to help their parents, women have to go back to work soon after delivery, and where older persons cannot rely on any income of their own. So obviously this is not the world that we want, and this is why you are here joining us today in this discussion. So what we learned from COVID-19 is, of course, that social protection is extremely relevant and that all societies need social protection systems, both to support their population against the routine life cycle risks, but also to be able to respond to systemic crises and shocks. And today, the recovery trends between advanced and developing economies are really uneven. And this 2-track recovery is really dangerous because it's creating a great divergence, which needs absolutely to be corrected immediately. So what do we want? In this context, the International Labour Organization, and which is composed of 187 countries, represented by their governments and by workers and employers organizations, met in June 2021 during the International Labour Conference for a discussion on social security and provided clear guidance to the organization and to themselves, to the ILO member states. They decided that all countries really need to build universal social protection systems. And here what they mean is really to protect all members of society across the life cycle with adequate levels of benefits to really allow a life in dignity. So the social protection systems need to be robust and sustainable and adapted to current challenges, but also to future challenges such as demographic changes, new pandemics, or also the risk of the climate change. And they need also to provide adapted solution to those who are today working in the informal economy and are massively excluded from social protection systems. The member states of the ILO have also acknowledged that countries should invest more in their national social protection systems. Today, there is a huge financing gap, meaning that the countries don't invest sufficiently to achieve at least what we call the social protection floor. And so additional investments are needed now and they should come from, of course, domestic resources, and this can be achieved through tax reforms, reallocation of budgets, the extension of contributory social security to the informal economy, for instance. However, for low-income countries, closing the financing gap is out of reach by 2030 because this financing gap is huge in percentage of their GDP. So for these countries, it is there is a clear need for more global solidarity to complement and support their national efforts. And also an important discussion that was taking place at the ILC International Labour Conference is that there is a disconnect between the policy priorities of countries, which is, of course, obviously to protect everybody and to have adequate social protection for all, and also on one side, and the financing priorities of the same countries that are, I mean, often not enough financing is available for adequate social protection for all. And so the discussion stressed that more coherence should be achieved both at country level, but also in the multilateral system between ILO, the UN family, the World Bank, the IMF, and many others, and that the ILO should play a leading role in building this coherence. And this is, I mean, universal social protection and closing this financing gap is, of course, not only a top priority for the ILO, it's also a priority for the UN. If you look at the UN Secretary General report, Our Common Agenda, and the idea of a global accelerator for jobs and social protection that he had and has announced on 28th of September, it's really focusing on achieving universal social protection and ensuring that there is sufficient resources for making universal social protection a reality for all. So it's clear that time for action has come. So the challenges before us are huge, but the good news is that we have already a lot of experience collectively. And at the ILO, we are really not starting from scratch. And the Global Flagship Programme on Building Social Protection Floors for All that was launched in 2016 already is and can be considered, if you want, as an accelerator for achieving universal social protection. During the first phase that just ended, we have provided in-country support to 21 target countries and territories. And in all these countries, we have managed to achieve institutional changes. What we mean by institutional changes is that we have, for instance, supported the government in establishing a new unemployment scheme in Indonesia, or we have supported them to establish a new social security system from scratch, or so these are changes of institutions, reforms in the social security system that will last for many years. And through these changes, actually, we had a lot of impact on people, and we estimate that the impact that our work has had impact on at least 23 million of people. So these changes and these impacts are not temporary, but they are long-lasting because they are provided by social protection systems that are embedded in law, that are financed from domestic resources, so that are sustainable. In addition to this country work, we have complemented these efforts through the development of knowledge. And this is not theoretical knowledge, this is really applied knowledge. It's very important for us to document the development processes on social protection, to identify good practices, and to develop methodologies and tools that can be used by many more countries. So during the past 5 years, we have produced 6 good practices guides. One is a guide to support the development of national social protection strategies, which is really the starting point now of any development process. And this guide helps you to calculate the cost of various policy options through a national dialogue involving workers and employers organizations, and also civil society and a whole of government approach. It's important that in these dialogues you have the ministries of labor, social welfare, health, education, also ministries of finance, planning, etc. There is another guide which is really to support the development of unemployment protection scheme, and we know through the crisis that unemployment protection is key to support people during difficult times. We have also a resource package to support the extension of social security to workers and enterprises in the informal economy, which is the big challenge today that we need to overcome. A handbook on providing concrete options to finance social protection, to create more fiscal space for social protection, which is as well key if we want to progress. A guide on social health protection for refugees and host communities, and another guide on extending social protection for migrant workers, which is also very important and timely given the current context. In addition to that, to these guides that are really useful for policy work, we have developed quantitative tools that help you to do all the calculations that are needed for sustainable social protection systems. There is, for instance, a costing tool to cost different policy options. There is also online actuarial tools that actuaries in your organizations or your countries can use to check whether the system is financially sustainable. So all these tools are available on our website, and we are also organizing a lot of capacity building through the training center in Turin. So if you want to register, this is, I think, a great investment. And also through a Transform training package, which is has been developed in Africa and is now being further developed in other regions. Of course, the ILO is not working alone, and this is why, for instance, Eileen from Irish Aid is present on this panel. We progressively learn from the development partners we are working with. We learn from each other and from the project that we are implementing. And these partnerships for us are really extremely important. In addition to that, we have, through this first phase of the flagship, strengthened our partnerships with United Nations at country level. We have now 31 UN projects in different countries that really help us to come as one UN and to have more impact at country level. And in addition to that, we are really discussing with UN partners through global networks, such as the Global Partnership on Universal Social Protection, that actually any country can join under the condition that they fulfill the they have the political will to implement or to support the implementation of universal social protection. Last but not least, it is very important to work with workers and employers organizations. They are a part of the constituents of the ILO. But in addition to that, building sustainable social protection systems requires their full involvement, both at the design phase and at the implementation phase, so that both workers and enterprises can be fully committed to universal social protection. So this is why we are working with workers and employers organizations, both through our country project and also through specific networks at the global level. So based on these achievements, we have just launched the second phase of the flagship program, which Aurélie will talk about a bit later. And you can find more information on our past achievements and also the strategy for the second phase on our website. I hope that we can share the link to the flagship program website. And if you are interested to see what the ILO does at country level, I really invite you to consult the 50 country pages that have been prepared for you on this website. And we also have a global map of our staff so that you can meet colleagues. So in Vietnam and in the Caribbean, you already have André and Ariel on this call, but we have many other colleagues that you may want to contact. So ILO member states are really determined to build back their economies and societies better, and this means with universal social protection. But at the same time, they are facing numerous challenges, and this is why we plan to really double our ambitions and efforts during the second phase of the flagship program. So I will hand over now the floor to Ariel, as I understand that there is a very discussion with several panelists to discuss what is needed to make universal social protection a reality for all and how this ILO flagship program on social protection can contribute to this collective effort. Thank you so much, Ariel, and thank you, colleagues.
Certainly, yes. Thank you very much, Valerie. I think that was an excellent introduction. So you clearly presented the objectives. So what are the overarching objectives that we need to follow in terms of universal, adequate, sustainable, resilient social protection system? You have also talked about the gaps, the challenges we have ahead. And we are not starting from scratch. So as you said, so we have already great achievements in which we can build on. We learned a lot also from the pandemic, and the impressive response needs to be kept at the same pace. So I think with the panelists today, coming from the different regions and also seeing the list of participants, we'd also represent all parts of the world. Thank you very much for joining us. Remember that we have the questions and answer box, so don't hesitate to address the questions there, and we will do our best to look at them. The first topic I would like to engage the panelists on, it's about universal social protection, as you said, and this full idea of leave no one behind. I mean, as the ILO and also as the UN, the universality is probably the most important principle that we are looking after now in social protection system, not only recognizing recommendation 202, but also in SDG 1, particularly in the target 1.3. I think those who had some doubts about universal social protection, I think the pandemic actually provided all the responses to that. I believe that this idea of reducing the idea of social protection system to the poor and vulnerable is not valuable anymore. So we have learned that universal social protection is a social necessity, it's a political necessity, it's an economic necessity. I don't think anyone in this room is poor and vulnerable, but I can bet that nobody here would say that they don't need any kind of social protection. Of course, we don't need social protection at the same size, at the same time, at the same level, but we all need some kind of social protection. And this is particularly what universal social protection means for everyone. So Eileen, Ireland, together with Kenya, co-facilitated negotiations of the SDG Sustainable Development Goals and make Ireland a key advocate for Leave No One Behind. If you can just make your microphones when you are not speaking, thank you, please. Or the hostess, if they can mic the microphone. I open, we are getting a lot of feedback. So Eileen, I was saying that Ireland, together with Kenya, co-facilitated. Give me a second. Let me see if I can do something with that. Okay. So I was saying that Ireland, together with Kenya, co-facilitated the negotiation of the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal, and as such, Ireland is certainly a key advocate for leaving no one behind. No? And the Ireland's policies for international development are also underpinned by this commitment to leave no one behind. So the concrete question for you is if you can tell us how these commitments are reflected in the Irish aid support to social protection.
No, thank you very much for having me and for the questions. Ireland's policy for international development and also our social protection strategy provides the overarching framework for our work on our engagement in social protection. And we recognize, I mean, we have a very rights-based approach to social protection and recognize that social protection is key for reducing poverty and inequality, but as mentioned earlier, also for progressing many of the SDGs. At the core of our approach is really support for a coherent national social protection system. So really investing in systems that look at assessment, targeting, registration, information management systems, and also ensuring that budgets, national budgets, and there's grievance redress mechanisms in place. So supporting social protection system is really at the heart of our social protection strategy, and really recognizing that we need to this is a long-term investment that benefits and has a result at the end, and it's really need to keep that in mind, I think, because it's really established in the building block. Perhaps targeting is initially necessary, but we're looking at a much more comprehensive approach, and especially in many countries, we're starting from a basis where there's still a lot of work to be done when we still have 4 billion people who have no protection. Added to that, we really also focus on support for capacity and development and training through Transform. And I think that's, again, quite a comprehensive approach in terms of collaborating with other partners to roll out and build understanding of social protection. And finally, just one other point that is really around finding ways to build, to generate understanding around the benefits of social protection and really look at financing for social protection, both domestically, but also in terms of international solidarity through development cooperation. And thank you. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Aurélie. Quite useful your words in terms of looking at, I mean, the development of social protection system from a whole perspective, right? From starting with the design, with the implementation, with the monitoring and evaluation, and the key aspect that you mentioned in financing will come we'll come back a bit later on that point. I have particular questions on that too. But we can now fly to Vietnam and welcome Andre also. Thank you for joining us. And talking about a bit of Vietnam, so we have seen the amazing progress that Vietnam did in reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. So certainly, the social protection system of Vietnam has greatly contributed to this progress. Nonetheless, we know that some challenges exist, as in everywhere, these challenges in achieving universal social protection. You have been providing great support to the stakeholders, government workers, and the employers in Vietnam for a long time. So, can you please share with us your experiences about these challenges, what we can do, and how the ILO Flagship Programme can be instrumental in addressing these challenges?
Thank you very much. And before I start answering your question, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk a little bit about Vietnam here tonight. It's 9:30 p.m. here in Asia at this point. As you mentioned, Ariel, Vietnam has indeed made remarkable progress towards achieving the SDGs and building a strong social protection system, particularly in recent decades. But at the same time, it's still true that the system still struggles to reach a lot of people, and particularly those in more vulnerable groups. Now, this becomes particularly problematic when we see the size of some of these vulnerable groups in Vietnam. It's not only a matter of vulnerability, but the amount of people who compose these groups. In particular, informality continues to be, for Vietnam, as for many other countries in the region, a very big challenge in expanding social protection coverage. And for you to have a notion of the size of the problem, it's estimated about 36 million people in Vietnam are in informal employment. So when we consider these people as vulnerable, and the system is not reaching the most vulnerable, then we have a huge gap. And this gap has been made painfully obvious in the recent COVID-19 pandemic and the response of the government. The government made great efforts to design policy packages that targeted and addressed specifically informal workers. So the law decrees specifically name informal workers and the benefits they are entitled to. But then what the government found out was that they could not identify these workers and they could not reach them. So again, this shows the need for us to continue to build systems that increase in their coverage and their efficiency. Kind of on the back with this problem as the backdrop, since the beginning of 2020, the ILO office in Vietnam as a whole has started this office-wide engagement with different stakeholders in order to better support transitions from informality to formal employment. And given the multiple dimensions that informality has, the large levels of heterogeneity that workers within informality do have, it was agreed both from the ILO side and stakeholder side that this office-wide kind of approach was the only way to really address this issue. And this again becomes a key issue into kind of expanding social protection towards a more universal kind of frame. And so, and the first step that everyone agreed on and that we started with and we're still ongoing is that we had a really big need to deepen the research and technical understanding of all these multiple dimensions of informality. And let me give you, for the sake of this event, let me give you a very specific social protection program. And as the social protection system still struggles to reach a lot of people, this is particularly true for the social insurance system in Vietnam, and even more so for women. So our estimates for 2019 is that about 16% of women only, 1/6, have an access to a retirement pensions through the contributory system in Vietnam. So because of this, there's this preconceived notion that whatever social protection coverage expansion strategy was decided for the future, it would always add to have women as a focus. And the key idea was that one of the big questions is how do we bring women to social insurance? So this is based on a preconceived notion that women might not be aware of their entitlements, or they might not know how they can register and go through administrative procedures to join Social Security, and therefore there's a need to reach out to them. So this was the preconceived notion. The ILO, in the meantime, started doing a lot of research with the Vietnamese Women Union. And we found out some staggering things that actually changed our perspective on this issue. So we found out that when we look at women between the ages of 25 and 29 in Vietnam, the coverage rate is almost 58%. For you to have an idea of how outstanding this number is, the reportedly very ambitious goal of Vietnam for the whole system is to reach 60% coverage by 2030. And we found out that when it comes to women at a young age, they're almost there. So the question becomes not as much, how do we bring women to social insurance? The really big question we need to be asking from a policymaking standpoint is how do we keep them in the system? Because by the time women get to 50 years old, 55, the coverage rates go below 10%. So, and they never stay, and most of them don't stay in the system long enough to have access to retirement pensions and so on. So I think perhaps this is a very specific example, but I wanted to kind of highlight how important our technical work that we do to support our constituents at the country level. And this works both through our social protection programs in the country. For instance, this study in particular was financed in part by an Irish aid finance program, but also through our flagship program and the support we received from regional and headquarters level to really deepen this technical understanding of the problems so that we really can enable our partners to make the best evidence-based policy making decisions going forward. Otherwise, we will not be able to progress as fast as we would like towards the goal of reaching universal social protection. And let me stop there.
Thank you very much, Andre. Very good points and important points. And as you're rightly saying, so understanding doing proper assessments is key important, particularly in the informal economy. And I mean a bit of publicity, but please take a look at the handbook that was produced by the ILO for the extension of coverage, which is extremely rich in good practices, in advice and experiences. Very important point. And I mean, like you and like I, that we are very in the first front of dealing with our constituents. These parts, this part of the extension of coverage is certainly a challenge in developing countries. But let me now move a bit into financing, the second part, which as we are seeing now, it has become one of the key challenges, in achieving universality, in expanding coverage, and in providing adequate benefits. Because although we are seeing that economic growth it is happening a bit all around the world, kind of 4% is expected GDP growth globally, we are not seeing that this is reflected in the employment creation as expected, right? And so finding funding for social protection is becoming a challenge, and certainly there are some threats of austerity that could challenge even more this solidarity in financing that we have as a key principle in recommendation 202. So a question for Richard now, with a bit of experience of Eastern Africa. We have seen also that Kenya has made significant efforts in the last years to increase the fiscal space for social protection, which is very commendable. What we want to know a bit more is if you can tell us how Kenya successfully managed to leverage, first of all, international development assistance to build this social protection system that you have, and then how you gradually move into domestic financing. Please, Richard.
Thank you, Ariel, and thank you to Valerie and Gamma for the presentations, and also my colleague from Ireland. Just like Vietnam, Kenya's situation is not different, really. Kenya's population estimated at 50 million, and 36.1% people below poverty line. And when it comes to informal workers, 83.9% of the workers are in the informal economy. But again, of importance here is that social security is a right in Kenya and our constitution. In terms of coverage, 10.1% are covered by at least one social protection benefit, and 28% are affiliated to a social health protection, and 22% of the working population are covered by social insurance. Currently, Kenya spends about 0.4% of our GDP on investment in social protection, and Kenya is classified as a medium human development country following the Human Development Index value of 2017. Now, in terms of health insurance, and I think this is important for us to look at the financing. In terms of social health insurance, the National Health Insurance Fund of Kenya has grown from about 3.5 million people to 6.5 million contributors as we speak. And also in terms of social insurance, the National Social Security Fund currently covers about 3 million workers. Kenya has adopted a life cycle approach to social protection in its programming, even though the approach is not yet fully developed across the life cycle risks as per the ILO Convention 102, and as anticipated by the recommendation 202 on establishing social protection form. Nonetheless, significant progress has been made in terms of the various interventions for both the contributory and non-contributory funds, especially for the social insurance and social assistance. Again, I want to make some small reference to what Barry presented yesterday during the launch of the regional strategy for accelerating social protection coverage in Africa. And I was glad to listen to our presentation on financing, and particularly the intent of Africa to achieve 40% coverage by 2025. I was particularly happy with one slide which she highlighted, international solidarity, with an example from Kenya. Now that slide, Barry, if you recall, it shows the share of social protection budget financed domestically in Kenya. And you'll note that since 2008, Kenya has gradually grown, and as we speak today, the international support has dropped significantly, and almost 70% of the social protection programs in Kenya are supported fully by the government of Kenya. The government of Kenya views protection, social protection, not as a cost, but as an investment in long-term sustainable economic growth for Kenya, and since 2013 had a fully fledged State Department with a social, with a principal secretary in charge of social protection. This is very, very important because social protection has been given the limelight that it deserves, and much as financing and social protection is the responsibility of the state, ensuring equitable and sustainable financing of national social protection schemes here in Kenya has been identified as one of the key challenges facing us, and particularly the extension of social protection in the country. Indeed, of course, financing social protection in Kenya is financed by various sources, including government expenditure, international aid, especially what we have had, especially during the piloting of the programs from UNICEF, from ILO, from World Food Programme, but also from private and community and non-governmental organizations, which have really contributed to the development of social protection in Kenya. Again, the transformation of Kenya's social protection system has seen its trajectory move from a contributory system into the beginning of what you may call a multi-tiered system with fundamental and foundational tier, which is financed fully by the government, especially the social assistance. We have, in the meantime, been working on the Kenya National Social Protection Investment Plan, which is targeting 2018-2030. And when you look at that plan, it focuses on investing up to 3% of GDP by 2030. Now, among the things that have really made Kenya's social protection financing grow, like I said earlier, in 2012, for instance, Kenya spent about $151 million on social protection. By 2024, Kenya spent $220 million in social protection. Currently, Kenya spends about $260 million in social protection. So you'll see that the government expenditure on social protection has been growing over time. Now, during the period, we have had the introduction and continuous scaling up of tax-financed cash transfers, and currently branded as the Inua Jamii cash transfer programs in Kenya. And again, over and above that, we have had many of these programs that not only began as pilots with very small numbers, but have grown. If I have to give an example, for instance, we have the cash transfer for orphans and beneficiaries, which began way back in 2004 with only 500 beneficiaries. Today, 2021, we have got 353,000 beneficiaries. The older persons beneficiaries began in 2007 with only 200 beneficiaries. Today, 2021, we are having 833 beneficiaries. The persons with severe disability, we began in 2010 with only 2,100 beneficiaries. Today, 2021, we have got 47,000 beneficiaries. You will see from that indeed there has been a growth. This growth has not only been out of the government support, but also we have had others coming in We have had various UN agencies playing a partnership role, and particularly the International Labour Organization, the United Nations Children's Fund, the Food and Agriculture Organization. We have had the World Food Programme. Now, in collaboration with the government of Kenya through various programs, they have been able to give us the technical support, and this has again created. We should also not forget government commitment. Social protection is about political willingness. In the last 10 years, Kenya has had a government and political leadership that has supported social protection, and that's why you can see there has been that allocation of funding in social protection. I wish to stop there.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'm very happy that you're part of this panel. Your experience is extremely useful and inspiring also for, I think, for other countries that are trying to embark in all the reforms and changes that you made, and the expansion of social protection is certainly one of the genuine, I would say, approaches to expand actually the funding sources for sustainable social protection. But before going to Andre with another question, Valeria, I see you here, and just wanted to get one question from the participant, which is talking about the Global Social Protection Fund. And they are asking whether there are some progress that can be informed about the Global Social Protection Fund, and in terms of about the pros and cons for the perspective of donors and recipient countries. So do you have some updates on that you can share with the audience?
Yes, thanks a lot for the question. I think the first news or positive news is that the ILC, the International Labour Conference, in its conclusions in June 2021, has asked the ILO to start working on the feasibility of a global financing mechanism that could take the form of a global fund or something else. And these conclusions and these recommendations and the action plan that we have prepared have now been endorsed by the governing body of the ILO on the 9th of November, which means that we have now officially the green light to start working on this topic and leading the discussion on this topic. So this is the first answer. And then the second answer is that, as you could see, there has been the launch of by the UN Secretary General of the Global Accelerator for Jobs and Social Protection, which has 3 pillars. One pillar is to support countries in building integrated national social protection and employment strategies, with the aim, obviously, to link social protection to employment, because we know that unless we tackle the issue of informality and try to ensure that more enterprises and workers move out from the informal to the formal economy, it will be unless we manage that, it will be very difficult to achieve universal social protection. So there's really integrated approaches that have to be developed at country level. This is one pillar. A second pillar is the financial track, if you want. So here the idea is to support countries in increasing domestic resources for social protection. So here the example of Kenya is amazing, because even if it's still a small percentage of GDP, we can see already the huge impact it had on households and beneficiaries. So increasing the domestic resources for social protection through tax reforms, for reallocation of budget, through the extension also of social protection to the informal economy, and creating, within this financing track, creating a favorable, a conducive environment for domestic resource mobilization. So here there has been a lot of discussions on ensuring that ODA commitments are respected. Many OECD DAC countries don't finance up to the 0.7 of their GNI, their ODA. So we really need to increase this effort, and to ensure also that social protection that represents less than 2% of total ODA is considered as a greater priority by OECD DAC countries. So this is one part of the answer. Another part is mobilizing. There has been a lot of discussions on the SDR. So the IMF has released 650 billion SDR allocations to countries to facilitate the recovery. Only a small share is available for the developing countries. So here the idea is that developed economies can also share their shares, share their special drawing rights to facilitate the recovery in low-income and middle-income countries. So these are options to create more fiscal space for social protection. So you see, it's not just building a global fund, it's really trying to identify all the different options, which requires a lot of work at country level, obviously, but also a lot of advocacy and political work at the global level. And last but there's a third pillar. Sorry, Ariel, I'm very long. There is a third pillar.
Yes, please. If you can, 1 minute, if you can, because we have another topic. So I didn't want to end the discussion. Thank you so much, Valerie. But I didn't want, I mean, we still have 10 minutes, and I also wanted to address the topic of resilience and robust social protection system, which now is extremely important, and not just seen as a temporary response when we have a shock, a natural shock or a crisis or a pandemic, but how we can actually build social protection systems that are resilient and they are prepared to address shocks, but also that can support a wide range of transitions, what we see in the labor market, in the blue economy, in the green transition, etc. And in that sense, a question for Richard is about governance matter. You touched a bit on your initial response, but if you can tell us a bit how important is for Kenya strong governance. And I see some questions also in the chat about the participation of civil society in social protection and also on the flagship. So if you can also share some experiences from Kenya about the participation of civil society in your activities. Richard, are you with us? Okay, I see we have lost we have lost Richard, so hopefully he can join us soon. Oh, you're there, Richard?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, thank you so much for the intervention from Valerie. And what I want to say from my last remarks, I did say, of course, and I want to re-emphasize that Kenya's progress has been as a result of collaboration with various social partners and tripartite in Kenya. And here we are talking about the Workers Association and the Employer Association and the government in providing technical support. And this really going forward, and I need to maybe take a minute on this. This support, this collaboration, as seen as we speak now, Kenya is in the process of introducing a work injury benefit, an unemployment benefit, and a maternity benefit. Both these, all these three programs are ILO in collaboration with the government and the social partners. Feasibility studies are going on, and out of that, it is expected that new programs will be introduced. Indeed, in Kenya, the civil society, we have the Africa Social Protection Platform. Actually, it's even hosted here in Kenya, and it works very, very closely with the government. And of course, not forgetting other development partners like DFID and FES, and all of them are supporting the social protection programs. But in terms of governance, indeed, I need to say something here that Kenya's social protection subsector is an important strategy in poverty reduction. However, moving forward, it is important that there are clear rules of the game which define the context for accountability, relationships, and of course, the roles and responsibilities of the actors involved and the controls and accountability. In doing this, the government has worked with the partners in the development of various regulations. Like, for instance, under social insurance, the National Social Security Fund Act number 45 is a product of joint work with ILO. ILO indeed did give to NSSF the first technical lawyer who worked with NSSF in designing and drafting the act. Currently, the National Hospital Insurance Fund bill is before Parliament, and it seeks to extend coverage. Again, there are efforts to improve on the social assistance programs, and the social assistance fund regulations are before Parliament.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much, Richard, for that response. I would like to move now also to Eileen on the same aspect of resilient and robust social protection systems, and this idea of whole of government approach, whole of society approach, because we have seen that in the COVID-19, the need of having this comprehensive approach is of course funded based on rights. It's throughout the life cycle is particularly important now. So from your experience, why is this policy coherence for social protection so important, and what is the role of development partners in making it a reality?
I mean, I think the importance of coherence in social protection has already come out through the discussions today. I think for a sector that needs to attract more actors, more support, more financing, both domestically and internationally, ensuring coherence both in policy, strategies, and programs is really, really critical, both to reduce fragmentation and duplication, and also to maximize impact and results, and basically change lives through ensuring a comprehensive protection. And in terms of, so I think the rationale why is self-evident. In terms of what development partners can do or perhaps do, I mean, it's often context specific, I think, many in terms of the opportunities that are there. So, and different partners and actors come with different skills and expertise. So I think collaboration is really key. But that collaboration comes through joint analysis and joint understanding of what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and what the priorities are. And I think secondly, just from my experience working in Ethiopia and also at headquarters, is really around coordination. There's space, actually, is one of those areas where there's space for everyone, and the more actors and the more players and the more countries that are engaging and prioritizing social protection, the better. So really that coordination, but at the same time, ensuring that there are platforms that are efficient, effective around coordination. I think the other point is really around dialogue with national partners, but dialogues with ministries of labor, dialogue with ministries of finance, and the quality of dialogue and bringing the different actors and different expertise and stakeholders together. And I do want to say around financing and kind of modalities, that there's different modalities in terms of financing social protection programs. And I think there is a call to be made that as far as possible, that there should be coherence in that financing to ensure efficiency in a sort of resource constrained environment. And I'll just conclude with one point around coherence. Like social protection evolves, political will is really important, but actually once you build understanding and citizens recognize the benefit and that's a right, it's sort of a vicious positive circle where the right and the systems and the policies will translate into having protection for people in the long term. But I think before we get there, there are 4 billion people who don't have any protection and who probably are really struggling as a result. And I think recognizing that and sort of learning and promoting that knowledge of the benefits of social protection in the process of extending social protection at different levels, at program or project, but trying to take a much more sort of strategic and big picture, national and global approach. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Yes, extremely important. And just in 1 minute, sharing the experience in the Caribbean with this. We know that this is a region when we have hurricanes and these natural disasters, and we have seen since 2017 that the linkages within the government system, for example, with national disaster management agencies and the role of ministers labor there. So it didn't exist. So everything has to be built, and then they can be better prepared for the future. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eileen. So before concluding the panel, let me just give 1 minute to each of you for your last words, the messages you want to give to the participants, and then we will move with the third part of the webinar with Aurélie. So Andre, I will start with you.
Let me start with something very basic and non-technical, which is we don't make omelets without eggs. That my mom told me a long time ago, and it's true for social protection as everything else in life. And Richard mentioned that political commitment is really important, but political commitment must include a commitment of investment on social protection. And I think this is a really important sentence for us to take forward. It's an investment on social protection. Social protection is not a cost, it's an investment on people and on the country and the society and the economy. And I think something that we have not done a good enough job in the past, and I think we are getting much better at it and focusing much more on it as the ILO, is to make the economic case for social protection, to really try to estimate and bring forth this idea that it's still surprising to many people that when we put money and funds in the hands of those who need it the most vulnerable, this drives economic growth. This drives economic development, and therefore it should not be seen as a cost, but again, as an investment. And I think that's what I would like to leave it on the financing side, because I think it's really, if we really want to move forward, we really need to put our money where our mouths are.
Thank you very much, Andre. You made me hungry now. Let me now move to Richard for your concluding remarks, Richard.
Thank you, Ariel, and thank you, Andre, for emphasizing the importance and the fact that social protection is an investment, and all our governments and should be encouraged to invest as much as they can. Now, my remarks is I need to talk about Kenya first. Allow me to appreciate the UN agencies and the support that we have had in the development of our social protection. But again, currently, government resources fully fund the social protection sector, like I said, 100%, but at just 2% of the overall budget and 0.4% of the GDP. Now, that remains a low investment priority. And given that only a small portion, 22% of the households are currently supported, we seek more support from our partners, ILO, UNICEF, WFP, etc. Again, despite the progressive policy and institutional reforms within our social protection subsector, like I said, you'll note that many programs are heavily fragmented. Like my sister said, coherence is very, very critical. And this means that we need to work on our legislations so that there can be talking. In Kenya, we have 2 levels of government, county government and national government. And indeed, collaboration and coordination are critical. And there is need to get more support so that we can integrate these systems and levels of government for a effective delivery of social protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Richard. Eileen?
Yeah, I think I would start by actually and finish by congratulating the ambition around the Africa strategy. I think that's a really welcome development, and I think investing in social protection systems is critical in the current context, taking advantage of the momentum around social protection that's arisen as a result of the COVID pandemic, and trying to extend that to longer term social protection measures, and continue raising understanding of a rights-based approach to social protection and the benefit of social protection for the delivery of the SDGs. Because that's how we will leave no one behind, to put it that way. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Eileen. Just remind me of we are quite advanced with the social protection and social inclusion strategy for the Eastern Caribbean countries, working with UNICEF and the OECS Commission, and hopefully early next year we will have also a strategy for one part of the Caribbean at least. So last but not least, Valerie, take the opportunity. There are two questions that you can probably address to, is how the CSO and how the GBN, which I guess is the Global Business Network, can actually be involved in the second phase of the flagship. So in your concluding remarks, if you can address that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. So for the CSO, the civil society, as you know, they have been involved in the social protection floor since the beginning with the adoption of the recommendation number 202, and there is a global coalition of the CSO for social protection floors. We have already formalized this collaboration through specific projects. And in all countries, the CSO are involved already in the national dialogues on social protection, in identifying the needs and the gaps, especially for specific groups such as workers in the informal economy, rural economy, etc. So I think the collaboration will continue and can also be increased. For the GBN is Global Business Network for Social Protection Floors. Today, it's a platform at the global level, and we also have a Francophone platform that aims at mobilizing private sector enterprises around the idea of social protection floors to ensure that they can walk the talk. So promote also social protection floors, both politically, but also within their companies to ensure that all their workers have access to adequate social protection around the globe. But now for the next phase, the idea is to work more at country level to ensure that this goodwill can translate in the development of national social protection systems. We have already some experiences like in Indonesia, where a private sector company has helped us to build a national to help the government in building their national public social protection system. And this is the direction that we will take now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie, and thank you all the panelists for great inputs. I think the session was full of information, and thank you again for having accepted the invitation. And also, I will now hand over the screen to Valerie, but before I would say also thank you to all the participants for the intervention. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all of them, but we certainly will have more opportunities to exchange them. Thank you very much, Valerie. Already.
Thank you very much, Ariel, and you make me even feel worse that I interrupt your interesting discussion and coming with a presentation. So I hope I will keep up the level of providing interesting information when I will be presenting to you what we are planning under the second phase of our flagship program. And our vision, I think it has been very clear. We heard from the panelists that we have a vision, or our vision is that social protection is universal and is leaving no one behind. This, of course, needs additional investments, domestic resource mobilization, as well as international solidarity. And also, we really need a system that is comprehensive and that is also well coordinated and governed. In the first phase of our flagship program, we were focusing on 21 priority countries, but actually the requests that we received were way broader than this. And so we were bold and doubled our ambition for the second phase, going up to 50 target countries. And so we doubled already more the number of countries. We also doubled the number of institutional changes that we want to achieve. So this means changes to the social protection schemes, putting in place new schemes, having new laws, or improving the operation. And actually, we aim at supporting 10 countries to adopt or reform their social protection strategies. We aim at supporting 30 countries to develop or reform the design of the social protection schemes. And we aim at supporting 40 countries to improve the operations of their schemes. And with these changes, we expect and hope that we will contribute to expanding the legal and effective coverage of social protection and giving therefore coverage to an additional 60 million people. So of course, how do we want to make this change happen? Our program is structured across 3 pillars. So we have a first pillar that is supporting 50 countries in building their national social protection systems and achieving universal social protection and following a 3-steps approach. Then a second pillar is on thematic support. So there the objective is to increase the thematic knowledge or the knowledge base on social protection. And that complements then also the country intervention with very specific expertise that is also provided by our technical support facility. And then the last pillar is strategic partnerships. We have already talked about the importance of working with civil society organizations, also working with our tripartite constituents, but then also working with the UN family and also with the whole community supporting social protection. Our theory of change is so based on those 3 pillars, and you see here that we are starting with in-country support, where we are supporting countries in a 3-steps approach, going from the development of national social protection policies or strategies to designing the social protection schemes and systems, and then improving their operations. However, we learned during the first phase that actually this sequence is not necessarily coming in that order. There are already systems in place. So we might also in some cases improve in parallel the operations while also on another scheme, maybe developing the legal basis. Then we have the thematic support that will support our work in countries. The ILO team, we are now 180 social protection experts, of whom 140 are based in all the countries. We are normally general social protection experts, and they are very specific expertise, for example, information management systems, social protection and climate change, where we need colleagues that are very specialized. And those colleagues will support us to work on the thematic areas and also in their specific thematic areas support the work in country. And based on that, they will contribute to increased knowledge sharing, also through South-South learning, and increase then the impact that we have. And again, these experts that are within our technical support facility will play a large role. And then of course, we have the last pillar on strategic partnerships. Those are in country as well as at global level, and also aiming at multiplying our impact so that it's not just ILO support, but we are working in partnerships with the UN colleagues and beyond. A key part of our work is, of course, also the promotion of the principles of the recommendation 202. In the country work, those will be reflected in the design of the schemes and the laws and so on that we support. They will also guide our thematic support, and of course the partnerships will also help us to promote those principles. And they have already been mentioned by Valerie in her introduction, but just as a short reminder, so we have the recommendation on the social protection floors that identified 19 principles. Those include the primary responsibility of the state, so that it's really the obligation of the state for providing a social protection system. It's tripartism for consensus building, but also having a social dialogue where all voices are heard and contribute to identifying jointly what the priorities are for social protection. And of course, it's a rights-based approach. Social protection is a human right and should be covered through the life cycle. We have been talking and hearing a lot about financing. So of course, financing should be adequate, but it should also be equitable. So expressing the solidarity across different parts of the population. Then, of course, we also have heard about the financial and administrative governance that is needed. This includes not just the administration of the systems, but also redress mechanisms or complaints mechanisms that are equally important so that everyone gets the right to social protection. And then a last point is on the coherence with other policies and institutions. There were questions also on how extending social protection to workers in the informal economy. And I think here it's one example where it's very important to work together with employment policies, for example, so that we can have a joint effort and also making clear that social protection is not standing alone. I have mentioned that we have the ambition of supporting 40 priority countries. Those countries have been selected based on consultations and feedback internally to the ILO, but also, of course, with our partners. And those countries were also based on, the identification was based on countries that have a strong political will, also a vision of moving towards universal social protection in line with ILO's approach. We were also looking at countries where we would be able to achieve specific and concrete results within the next 5 years, so the duration of the second phase of our program. And then it was also very important for us that we can work in partnership with the UN, but also beyond that. I mentioned the second pillar on the technical support that we provide. So we have 16 thematic areas. 8 of those areas contribute to extending social protection coverage to all throughout their lives. So they focus on specific groups such as workers in the informal economy or people living with disabilities or also populations affected by climate change. Or they ensure that specific life cycle risks are covered, such risks as health, sickness, health is actually not a sickness as a risk, or unemployment. To give you a few very specific examples, so the ILO will support adequate and sustainable social health protection in Lao PDR by working with the government and social partners to refine and finance the benefit package. Or another example, the ILO under the second phase will also continue to support Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt in exploring different policy options for extending social protection to migrant workers. The other 8 thematic areas focusing on what we need for building robust and sustainable social protection systems. So this includes how to finance social protection, how to develop legal frameworks that are aligned with international standards, how to collect the right information and statistics, or how to create a culture of social protection. And again, as a few examples, so in Senegal, the ILO will support the development of a unified social security legal framework, which seeks to extend the social protection to workers in the informal economy through providing a simplified scheme for micro enterprises. Or in El Salvador, the ILO will support constituents to collect the data on social protection using standardized social security inquiry, and also to coach the government counterparts to conduct regular analysis of the coverage of social protection and the related challenges. Coming to our third pillar, we have already talked a lot about partnerships. So of course, we have the partner countries who we support directly. We also work, of course, as one UN at country level, also at global level. We have the United Nations Social Protection Floor Initiative. We are more and more working also with international financing institutions. This is very relevant for the whole agenda on financing social protection. And then, of course, as the ILO, we also work very closely with our tripartite partners to the Global Business Network for Social Protection Floors, and also to the Social Protection Freedom and Justice for Workers Network. And here the ambition is not just working at the global level, but also have very specific activities at country level for making sure that tripartite voices are heard in the discussions around social protection. And then Valerie mentioned also the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors, where we are working with civil society. And of course, we will also be working in collaboration with other ILO flagship programs. Very important for us is that we are also accountable to our partners so that we are really monitoring what we are achieving under the program. We have a coherent, the program overall provides us with a coherent and common framework for doing this. We have a specific results monitoring tool that includes information on what is happening under our project and also which results we have achieved at country level. And we have shared already in the chat before, we have country pages that consolidate this information. So on those country pages, you will not only find an overview of the social protection situation in the given country, but you will also find information on ongoing and previous ILO projects, the results that we have achieved, and also funding gaps that remain in those countries. And we will soon also have thematic pages where you get the same overview for the 16 thematic areas I have been presenting. Of course, this also from our side needs a budget. So we have an estimated budget of 160 million over a 5-year period. We have already a lot of initiatives that are ongoing. So we still have a funding gap for around $70 million. I mentioned previously that we have a large team that is directly supporting the countries. And this is also reflected in our budget distribution. So we expect that the largest share of this budget will be used in country support to directly work with our constituents. That a small share will go to thematic approaches. And of course, there's also some budget needed for monitoring, evaluation, and knowledge dissemination. We are currently also setting up a multi-donor program that will support the program. This was really, in a nutshell, our second phase of the flagship program. You will find in the invite to the webinar on the webinar website, and also in the chat we have already shared the links to the webpage where you will find the whole strategy. You will also find the thematic areas with more detailed descriptions. You will also find the country pages. So we really encourage you to have a look at it. And of course, we are there to answer any questions you might have.